I was hacked and my business client data leaked. What are my obligations under UE data protection laws, and can I sue the hacker for damages? Well, this is another sort of $1 million question. It's quite complex and unfortunately all too common these days. But the answer really sort of depends on the circumstances of your data and your systems being hacked. I guess there's always, you kind of by default you will be presumed to have breached because the data was in your possession. You were the custodian of the data, and the data was leaked as a result of being in your custody, right? So the first presumption, the initial presumption, is that you are at fault. Now, that could further be bolstered, for example, by the fact that you might not have had proper security protocols in place, which ultimately exposed you to the sort of hacking incident. So there is an obligation on the business, especially business that holds certain data, proprietary and personal and confidential data of other people, that there are specific security protocols that are in place, and that the business does everything possible to be able to safeguard people's sensitive information. So there's a certain burden on you as a business, a certain level of standards of security. So if it can be shown that you were at fault because you are either negligent or irresponsible about having the right protocols in place, then so the buck stops with you, as the saying goes. So you will be held responsible. If, however, it shows that the hacker is quite sophisticated and there was very perhaps unreasonable, if not impossible, for you to have prevented this, then that's kind of a remediating factor. That's somewhat of an excuse. But even then, I mean, the person has suffered. For example, your clients would have potentially suffered by virtue of their data being leaked through you. So that's, there's you should be prepared to have to deal or face those disputes and potentially be prepared to pay compensation. That's why now you can file a case against the hacker and try to get compensation from them, and then ultimately compensate your client. But you will still, in most cases, will be the first ones to face the cases from your customers. And if the court issues a judgment that you have to compensate them, you'll have to compensate out of your pocket. Then you can countersue the hacker, recover money from them potentially, and then compensate yourself that way. But that's obviously a very complicated process, but that's sort of what you need to expect. Now, there are a few ways of mitigating that. So one is just having very clear contracts with your clients or with your customers that limit your liability, right? So limiting liability means that they will that where your liability is only limited to the amount of money, for example, they have paid you for the services. So let's say you are some kind of a website manager, and so they've paid you 1,000 dirhams for managing this part of the website. So you could include in the contract that your liability to your customer is limited to the amount of money that you have received from them from your services, i.e., this 1,000 dirhams, right? So that's basically at least contractual. Then you are covered in terms of liability. That's one way of doing it. The other way, and by the way, they're not mutually exclusive, so I actually recommend both. The other way is that you can get insurance. You can get insurance as a business to protect you from these kinds of hacking incidents. And therefore, let's say if this were to happen to you and it's a fairly big scale and the customers are coming after you, so your insurance would step in and ultimately compensate your clients, one, and then two, also will help defend you in court. And to be honest with you, that's kind of that these days, that's the right thing to do. And I would recommend that most businesses consider doing this, consider taking insurance. One, bolstering their contracts with their clients where they clearly limit their liability. Two, obviously, most importantly, have the proper cybersecurity protocols in place to try to safeguard the data and have very clear guidelines to then prove to the courts or to the customers that they had these protocols in place, and so it wasn't due to their negligence or being irresponsible that they were compromised, but rather because of the sort of sophisticated hacker attack. And then three, you've got these additional remedies such as insurance policies that will help you at least cover financially and potentially pay out your legal costs in the event you find yourself in this unfortunate situation being sued by your customers.